we need to look at something that's come up so many times with me and my clients. I'm going to get 2D under my belt first, and then I'm going to learn 3D. I used to get this all the time, Ethan, when I was teaching Vectorworks, that people would say to me, let me get the 2D. I want to learn to do 2D first, and then I want to go 3D. And I always struggled with the client who thought there was a difference between 2D and 3D drawing, because
Please continue.
the challenge is that they often bring their 2D, because this is in the old days when they were manual drafting.
Yes.
And we're
So
trying to
I'm
get them
about to
into the
talk.
3D world. And they struggled to move to the 3D method of production drawing, which is BIM. The building information modeling method is what we really want to get them into. And
Yes.
so what I really try to do now is with a client to show them why they need to be in 3D first. I don't know if you remember, I made that movie, How to Draw an ArchiCAD House in
Yes.
21 minutes.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it shows why you should build the model in 3D, because it's quick, it connects all of the parts together, which means that when we move the building on, the site updates, the elevations update, height relation boundary updates, if we change the design of the building, the site plan changes, the floor plans change, the foundation plans change, the elevations and sections change, the 3D view, everything is connected.
Yes.
And I think that when we teach a CAD program like that, or a building information program, I think we should teach 3D from the start.
Yeah. That's the questions I'm about to ask a minute ago, because what is the age group of your client? Because nowadays the schools only teach when the CAD or BIM programs you introduce to the students or new learners. The programs is the 2D plan and 3D drawing is only one click away, right? So you just draw two lines on the plan, and when you click the button, it shows you 3D view. Because of that, when we introduce the young students from the first day, and the students tend to think in 3D more than 2D plan, and they will stop. So it's molds the students, the kids in that way. I think that it's better to teach them in 3D, because the wall itself is 3D, not 2D. So it's more relatable. Okay, because a few years back, maybe 20, 30 years ago, there was no technology supporting 3D drawings. Computers are not that powerful enough. So we do a traditional approach. We draw two lines on the plan. That's a plan, and then we start another sheet again, which is elevations. So that's how is it, and we from there we build it. But the wall itself, our surrounding as itself is 3D. So when the computers are getting stronger, the software getting mature, and then we can do 3D, and which is really important. So from here, I would say all the listeners, you can see that we get first the 2D and 3D is only one click away, so you don't need to be worried about that. For if somebody who teach, we can guide through. Okay, this is how to do it easily. It's not like an old way of teaching, old way of learning, which is more, I think, cohesive, right? Cohesive should be the words of learning between 2D and 3D drawing. Yeah, that's what I think.
Now, I know that when I was at EIT, I used to teach 2D manual drafting. But remember, there's a reason for teaching that, and that is to teach line weight, pen control or pencil control, line style, and the basic understanding of how the plans relate to the object. We were trying to get students to understand that they can draw a two-dimensional drawing. And if you look at our details, most of the details we draw are two-dimensional details. Now, we might have 3D details. I see a real rise these days of a three-dimensional, using the 3D model to show the sequence of construction of a detail. Details these days are much more three-dimensionally complex than they used to be. And so I've seen drawings where there's half a dozen or a dozen 3D pictures showing the sequencing of a detail coming together, which is great. We need 3D for that. But when a student is starting, remember that they don't know how to hold a pencil. They need to be taught some of this information. They don't
Yeah,
understand why some lines are dashed and some are solid. They don't understand why some lines have heavier line weight than others, and that's what the part of the 2D is for. But as soon as I got my students into ArchiCAD, I straight away started them with a 3D model of the house. A little house, tiny little building, tiny shed. I understand that. The concept of going straight into 3D when we get to ArchiCAD, like 2D, we've taught you 2D, now we're going to do computer 3D straight away. And the other reason I taught them the 3D stuff is because it's a lot more fun.
Yeah,
The
true.
ability to build a little shed and turn it in 3D gives the student an understanding of, as you were saying before, that we appreciate the world in 3 dimensions, not 2D.
Yes,
We see
yes.
the world as a 3D thing. And to be able to see their model in 3D and turn it around is, for me, a win. So I understand that we need to teach the students how to use the trim tool and the line tool and the polyline tool and all those sort of other tools and how to draw hatching. Sure, I understand all of that. But we should really be pushing that to the end, to the documentation part, because the drawing we should be focusing on the 3-dimensional, the building information modeling. Remember that part of the course that you and I teach, or you teach and I used to teach, is a course called, we used to call it the BIM course. That's not what it's called. It's visual something,
Oh, visual design and
VDC,
construction, VDC.
visual design and construction. Now, that is we used to call it the BIM course. That is about building information modeling. And
Yeah.
it's also about the information part of that, which I think we should really have a talk about in another topic. So back to what we started with. I used to get a lot of clients, and they were older clients, I admit that. They used to say, let me get the 2D under my belt, and then I'll look at the 3D. And then it occurred to me that what I need to do is I need to show them why we do the 3D first. And so I wrote a quick start guide, which is about 15 pages long, I think. And in 15 pages, you've built a tiny little shed and created drawings from it. And it
Yeah.
shows how quick it can be to create those drawings. Because I know that people who are good at drawing in 2D can do a 2-dimensional elevation of a building. But when the things change, if a window moves in plan, they will have to update the plan, maybe the electrical plan, maybe the other plans. There's several drawings they have to correct, and they have to correct the elevations. Maybe they have to correct the section. Whereas if they've built a 3-dimensional model of the building, then all they need to do is to often click a button and everything updates. Update the elevations, update the section. A lot of the stuff is update all my viewports, and off it goes.
Yeah, it's really fun, right? When you drag the location, when you drag the window from one place to another, the elevation change, the plan has changed.
The
From
section's
one,
changed, everything's changed.
yeah, it's one click.
Because if something like a wall moves by 2 feet, 600 millimeters, if it was a load-bearing wall, you actually have to redo the piles. You have to redo the bracing. And so all of that stuff has to be redone. And if it was 2-dimensional drawing, you would have a lot of work to do to move all the walls. You have to scratch them out, redo them in different places. The Americans had a nice layer system that I saw when I was there once.
Yes,
I don't know if you've
yes.
ever seen it.
I did it. I did it.
The overlay drafting method, I think it was called.
Yes, during all the
That was
era.
very efficient.
Yes,
Yeah,
you
that
need to
was
have a
very efficient.
system of layers by layers. That's pretty
But
efficient.
comparing it to when I worked in London, it was ink on tracing paper, and
It's pain.
it's a pain. If you get it
It's pretty
wrong,
pain.
earlier on I said when you get it wrong, you got to get out the razor blade, and I don't mean to injure yourself, but we had to use razor blades to scratch the ink off the page.
Yeah,
Oh, terrible. So my way of thinking is that it's got to be, if we're teaching CAD, we've got to teach 3D first, and we've got to show how quick and easy it is. That's the important thing, is to show an early win. I
yeah,
know I got to teach, how to trim a line later, but later, once the students, the word I think I'm looking for is embedded. Once the students embedded in the CAD software, then we can teach them the more dull stuff, trimming a line, putting an annotation on a section, putting fills on the section, that kind of stuff.
yeah.
But if you taught them that at the beginning, it would be dull, and I don't think you would engage the student in the power of the three-dimensional model.
It's very interesting. Yeah.
I can't remember who told me, but you need an easy win. And for a long time, I've tried to show three-dimensional modeling in all my manuals to show people why it's important to do the 3D first, not to do.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, when I go back to my younger self, I'm always excited to draw 3D because I can turn and rotate and see around in the computers, and which is really exciting. For example, like Super Mario, not just that's not drawing, but Super Mario Super Mario Brothers 3, which was jumping that on a 2D plane. After that, it's become 3Ds, and it's always exciting. It's much better because that's how we appreciate the world. Yeah, the surrounding. That's our brain has been hardwired to understand 3D, not 2D. So yeah, it's more connected, more appreciate. That means yeah, it's easy win for everybody. And then 2D as a presentation, take a line to show the depth of field, which one comes first and second, which material is farther away, which material is nearer. So that depth of field you can show it to the presentations. That's another presentation technique. To summarize, 3D is to appreciate and to understand the architectural concept, the form, space, and 2D is to present as a technical drawing because all the technical details are still presenting in 2D, right?
Yep, all of
So
our
that's
drawings are
what
still
we check.
presented in 2D.
Yes, that's what I would take. So let's end the podcast. And again, don't forget to subscribe our Spotify channel, and we'll put in the link below. And Jonathan, do you want to say anything about our channel, Spotify?
I'd really like our listeners to focus on subscribing on Spotify
Yeah,
because it helps to build our numbers. We get a much more accurate understanding of what things people are enjoying. You can still leave comments. So please leave comments on Spotify, subscribe on Spotify, and let us know what topics you would like to hear us talk about.
with YouTube, when I am driving, I can listen. With Spotify, I can listen while driving. And also, I use Spotify on my TV, so it's really good. It's more engaging. Sometimes I don't need to fix my eye to the screen.
Listen on
Spotify
Spotify
works.
because then you can say, "Hey Alexa, play my favorite Spotify playlist or my favorite Spotify podcast, The Architectural Technologist."
It works.
All
All
right,
right.
Ethan, thank you very much for your time.
All right. Thank you. And see you next week.
See you
Bye.
next